Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen. And this week I am asking the question, what is your favorite non-music related hobby? And as a bonus, maybe you could tell us about a quote unquote famous rock star with an unusual hobby. There are a bunch of websites out there that have lists of these things that I find quite amusing. I'll get started and say that my hobby, and I think you've heard me talk about it before, is cooking. I got into cooking during the pandemic, and I signed up for the New York Times cooking website and have made quite a few recipes from that site in particular over the last 3 years. It's funny because I have the world's crappiest kitchen with no space to work, but I like to cook anyway. A few favorite recipes, and I'll link to them, and you can see pictures of them as we go through them. The first one I want to talk about is tomato and white bean soup with lots of garlic. And it's a delicious tomato soup, and I recommend you serve it with a grilled cheese sandwich made with sourdough bread and smoked Gouda cheese. The next recipe I'd like to mention is sheet pan chicken with roasted plums and onions, and it's quite a contrast between the sweetness of the plums and the tartness of the onions. It's a good contrast. There was a whole series. There was a link, and I see if I can dig it up. They had like 10 different recipes you could make with a sheet pan. And if you don't know what a sheet pan is, it's just like a big flat pan that has about inch sides, and lots of restaurants use them to make food. And you can buy some good ones online. And I bought two really good ones, and I've used them over and over and over again. And the last recipe I'd like to talk to you about is, and I just made it recently and posted a picture on my Instagram, is open-faced sardine sandwiches. I know a lot of you people out there don't care for fish of any type, but these are really good. I've made them so many times, even this past week. And here's a picture of me with my sardine sandwiches. And I added lettuce to the bottom of the stack of ingredients, but it's a really simple meal that you can probably throw together in about 15 minutes. So those are my recipes, and I recommend you try some cooking. I know that Rodney and Dan aren't really that into cooking. I think Joe likes to cook once in a while, but as for a rock star, I will talk about Sir Rod Stewart. And Sir Rod Stewart is super into model railroading. And he spent almost 25 years building a huge layout of an American city in his house out in Los Angeles. He used to go on tour, and he used to take parts of it, or he used to build parts of it. He used to get an extra hotel room to work on parts of this layout. I mean, he's that into it, apparently. And he claims, and he says he has done 90% of the work on the layout. He said he only gets someone to help him with the electrical stuff. And he said he really likes building the skyscrapers and weathering everything to look really old. We'll flash up some pictures of it. It looks like a city from like the 1940s or 50s. It's really cool looking. So that's my rock star, and that's my hobby, cooking. Who's next?
I fixed the book.
Yes.
I just saw that over there. That's kind of my hobby, just coming up with stuff on the spot, folks. I know, I'm really happy. It looks in 3D.
That's nice. That's very good.
I ran over to the 3D printer while we were talking. Yeah, I couldn't be happier with this. Hopefully this makes the little screenshot thing.
Okay, from the graveyard.
Okay, folks. Right now, my only hobby is music. It's really the only hobby I have time for. Personally, I'm surprised that any of us have time for anything else. I'm assuming that these gentlemen probably have a schedule very similar to mine, which is very, very full. And I'm about to run through my schedule. And keep in mind, I am the only band member who doesn't have any offspring. Okay, so I cannot imagine how busy I would be if I had kids. So
Joe,
I am...
Joe doesn't...
I don't have kids.
Well, not according to a Miss Natalie Portman, he has some kids. I'll tell you that right now. So I'm going to just run through this and imagine how busy I would be if, like Joe, I had 7 or 8 children by Natalie Portman. Okay, first of all, 4 days a week I work from home. So I'm up around 6:45 to be in my home office by about quarter after 7. I usually work to about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. On one day a week, I go in the office, which means I got to be up around 6 to be in the office by 7:30-ish or before that. Then what happens is, again, those are, working till 5:30, sometimes 6 o'clock at night. Sometimes I work weekends. So now you're beginning to see the hobby time diminish. But since we have a show coming up, one night a week, I have to do about a half hour of practice because I'm not a natural musician and I can't just hear and piece stuff. So I have to be very strict about this, except for last night. Last night was an hour and a half worth of practice. Why was it an hour and a half? Because I didn't quite like the sound of this one VST that FL Studio no longer has out there for you. So I was trying to change it and recreate it and see if I could get kind of another copy of that. And I have it on the one thing, but I couldn't move the DLLs. Then I looked at the clock and an hour and a half had gone by of me trying to fix that. And I did that for you people so you wouldn't be disappointed when that song came around. We have rehearsal at least one night a week. That means, folks, I leave the house around 5:30 and get home around 10:30 at night. Once a week, we do this show. I spend about 45 minutes a week working on writing my little thing for this show and also working up graphics. Now, Joe, how many hours a week do you spend editing this show?
Probably it depends, 5 to 6, or it could be longer or shorter. But
yeah, and he's got 8 kids by Natalie Portman. They're running around while he's trying to get this shit done. So Joe's, folks, you'll begin to see the hobby time for folks.
Oh, he's having an aneurysm.
Yeah. Well, Joe always looks like he's having an aneurysm because he's got 8 kids by Natalie Portman. Oh, by the way, folks, you're wondering why it takes you're wondering why it takes me 45 minutes to write for this show. That Natalie Portman joke, that went through 3 drafts. At one point, it was Lola Heatherton. And I know it went through 3 drafts because it says right here on my writing, Natalie Portman joke went through 3 drafts. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So, and then about 7 hours a month is spent with me working on my radio show. So, which counts as a musical hobby. So there you go. So even if I wanted to have a non-music hobby, I don't have time for one. And this is weird because I am not a musician. I can't sit down and jam. I can't just hear something and recreate it. For me, music is a series of problems that I must solve with experiments. So this is how this sort of became my hobby and something I do all the time and love to work on it. And I will give you an example of this. Friday night after work, I went over to the DX7 from the 80s, and because I'm trying to get like the perfect digital piano sound for something I'm working on. And I've been storing these sounds on this brain from the 80s that I had to wire a Frankenstein-style battery into, and they were all gone. And I'm like, oh no, somehow the battery that should last for at least 10 years has died. I didn't have a chance yet to back these up to a SciSex file. So I was like, oh no. So I'm putting in all these different batteries, nothing's working, and I pop it open, and I see that one of the leads has come off. Most people would be cursing, but not me, because now I get a chance to use my soldering skills. So I'm in there soldering away, and I get it, and then I have to run over once I get it, and then I just create a sound, save it on there just to make sure it hung onto it. So that's part of Friday night. Friday night from 9 to 11, I have to babysit my radio show. Make sure that goes fine. Again, part of my hobbies. By the way, when I'm putting those sounds in, I have to know algorithms, more science. I do the radio show, get to bed, get up early Saturday. I've been working on a series of covers and videos for the covers. So Saturday morning, I'm up early working on this video for this cover, which you folks will hear will be up on my channel about a month from now, because that's how far in the future I have to plan this stuff. So I'm doing it, and I think, boy, it'd be really cool for this if I could get my Dalek model to say the words, so my Dalek toy to say the words, but it just repeats phrases that are already in there. So as soon as the dollar store opened, I have to run over to the dollar store, get a cheap headset, strip it up, figure out how to work it into the Dalek, which I've taken apart at this point, so I can only see the head of it in the video. say the words into it, make sure it works, film that so you can only see it with the wires. And then so that the Dalek is worth money later on, I have to put everything back together as it was. And then it's off to get some poster frames. I'll talk about it later. But then back home in time to get ready, you go see the Divine Hand Orchestra or Divine Hand Ensemble. Sorry, Mano. Divine Hand Ensemble at Laurel Hill Cemetery, which is going out to a concert. But in a way, it's also work because every battle is won or lost before it's fought, and you want to get in there and you want to observe the landscape. So I'm there kind of mentally making some notes, but also enjoying myself, talking to the staff, finding out ticket sales are going, if there's been any problems, make sure stage is there. Dean, by the way, they use the sound system from Laurel Hill, which was fine for them, but I don't know if it probably would not work for us. Yeah. So Sunday, I get up and I've been doing another project. And part of that, I was moving songs that I've written from the Beat Step Pro to the Key Step Pro. You folks at home are probably thinking, well, that sounds like a breeze. You just move files from one to the other. No, the folks at Arturia decided not to make it that easy. They're not compatible. You can't just take them and move them. So what I have to do is I have to get the Beat Step Pro, open up the MIDI control center, take a look at what I've done. And I did some of this stuff in like 2015, take a look at all that, and then go over and recreate it on the Key Step Pro, like step edit mode, like one note at a time. You put it in, and then you go and you adjust the gate, which is the note length, put it in, adjust it. Again, this is something that most people would find horribly frustrating, but I love it. I love it because I feel like I'm doing an experiment. I almost feel like I'm carving a chair. It's just, I think it would drive most people nuts, but I really, really do enjoy that. And if you see stuff, all the stuff I do, like the electronic stuff or woodworking, I do woodworking. I've shown pictures before of my Ouija board rack that I used for small sense. I built that. Again, woodworking, it's a hobby, but again, it's a hobby that I use for music stuff. So in conclusion, I figured this out while I was doing this. Joe is the brains of the band. Dean is the hands. Dan is the heart. And I'm the scientist. Now, a scientist isn't a body part, but I'd like you folks to think of me as 12 inches of throbbing scientist. And if we want to talk about musicians that have hobbies, this is one I think is cool. KIRK Hammett from Metallica, who's probably the only member of Metallica I would hang out with. They got rid of Jason Newsom, was probably cool, but they got rid of him. But he collects horror movie posters, which I think is, and these things cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. My wife and I have been redoing our bedroom, and we're redoing the bedroom with horror movie posters. We'll have a picture up of that, but you'll see a hamper, a clothes hamper down in the corner there. I think it's like the lower left hand or something, but that little black thing down there, folks, when I come home from a sweaty gig, that's where I throw my sweaty clothes. Little insight there for you. And by the way, KIRK, I want to hang out with KIRK because he got into horror movies because when he was a little kid, he broke his arm and his parents just set him down in front of the TV. And he was like 6 years old or something. And Day of the Triffids was on and his mind was blown and it set him down this awesome path. So KIRK, I want to hang out with you. We both have the male pattern baldness. I think I know what caused yours. That would be Lars and James. And who knows, you may look at me and assume the same sort of thing that my bandmates made my hair fall out. But yeah, I think that is the coolest hobby, collecting horror movies. I have much respect. He tours with them. I first found out that he was doing this from an article in Atlas Obscura. I was like, holy shit, this is cool. I want to be that guy.
Cool. Well, I like to cook, Dean, you're right, but I'm not going to count that as my hobby. I kind of do it 4 nights a week, but you have to eat too, so I mean, I don't dislike it, but I'm going to say gardening, which I started doing in 2020, so this is my 4th year doing it. I started doing it in the pandemic year, and I liked it, and I'm learning as I go along, and I'm still a novice, but one thing I have been doing is I plant vegetables and flowers, and I've been planting wildflowers, which doesn't really make them be wild, but they're called pollinators, and they actually help with the vegetables too, because they attract bees and such, and you need that to get certain plants to produce fruit. And that
Just explain sex to our audience. He snuck in the birds and the bees.
Something I learned, but that brings me to the a famous musician, guitarist Steve Vai, and his hobby is beekeeping. He's a beekeeper, and he originally decided to become a beekeeper to help his wife's garden, her flower garden. After they moved to a new house in California that didn't have as many bees as the last house. The last house had a lot of bees around it naturally. And then he liked it so much that he started to produce his own honey. He makes his own honey every year, which they sell for charity. It's not sold in stores, but there's a video you can see on. I'll link to it on YouTube of a local news story that did a thing on him in Encino, California, from like a couple decades ago. And according to Wikipedia, he's still doing it and he's still making honey. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but according to Wikipedia, Mr. T is the president. So, you know, pity the fool in Congress who doesn't pass this bill.
So yeah, like Rodney has a busy schedule. Mine's pretty busy. And I have the kids full time now, so that's been even busier. 2 of them are in sports. So yeah, I have very little time for hobbies, but I do like to knit. I think I've talked about it before here, and you guys have seen me knitting. I don't really take it seriously, and I a lot of times I just do like I make these little bags or whatever. I used to make hats compulsively. And when I was doing that like private investigating work, I would sit in my car for hours and hours and hours and knit hats. I like to climb trees whenever I'm around a climbable tree. I like to collect bat quarters, which are the quarters that came out in 2020, the beginning of 2020, because it had bats on it. People were sensitive about the, bats that caused COVID. So they stopped printing them, but they're cool looking anyway. As a matter of fact, somebody, this guy, Jason, just from Oregon, just sent 22 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, in the mail. And it only cost $2.22. And it's like $5 worth. So, and that's, I think because I had talked about it here before, the bat quarter collecting. So I try to make like hobbies of things that like I can do while I'm busy doing other things. Like if I pay for something in cash and I get change, I always look for a bat quarter, I also like to make little videos. And I usually only have time to do that like at the end of the night before I go to sleep. I'll take either music I've done and put like video to it, or take a video that I shot and put music to that. I'm working on a video for our album, which I guess by the time of this viewing will be out.
Yeah, it'll be a day old.
Congratulations.
It's going in the day old bin. With the bagels that are a day old, that's 33 cents.
But I like and I do origami and stuff. I try to do magic tricks, but I suck at them. So I like trying to do little things while I'm busy, because I find myself like constantly like running around and doing stuff, and then it's like wait. So it's like either in like a waiting room somewhere or something, and then there's a piece of paper, a square piece of paper, I can make origami with that stuff. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in hobbies. I think we need to keep ourselves busy. My hands, especially.
Is there a famous person?
Honestly, I didn't really. I just kind of like. I noticed that Neil Young also collects model trains intensely. But yeah, I didn't study for the bonus question.
Sorry.
I like I skimmed and I saw that Neil Young thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I went through 7 drafts of different musicians and their hobbies. Some of them I'm disgusted by.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's now time for recommendations. And I have a somewhat lazy, simple one, which is if you have the opportunity to take a vacation, do it and make every attempt to disconnect from your work responsibilities. That's all I can say.
I like that.
Dan, just for you. Bats in dismal caves keep cozy. Bats remind us of Lugosi. Okay, so starting up. Speaking of, I talked a little bit about horror movies and my love and KIRK Hammett's love thereof. I'm going to recommend a horror movie from 2023, although some people say 2022, depending on which side of the Greenwich Meridian you're on. The movie's called Unwelcome. It takes place a little bit in London, but mostly in Ireland. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. I really, really liked it. I'm pretty much into love. Vienna was crazy about it. Vienna was like, why did we rent that? We could have bought that. Some people I noticed, any film that gets 0 stars and 10 stars, I'll definitely watch. You need to see this. There's nothing I can say about it that won't give the plot away. But it is a really wild ride. And O'Brien from Star Trek is in it. He's in everything. He's in Get Him to the Greek. All right. So normally at this point, I'd be talking about some weird little electronic gothy spooky band that nobody ever heard of. But actually, I'm going to talk about that for a second, though, although you might have heard them. Joe, Bestial Mouths are going to be playing Dracula's Ball. So this might be the first time Joe and I might be attending Dracula's Ball together. Although not as a couple, because I want to get beaten up by Natalie Portman. So that's good news. So I'm looking forward to that. But anyway, what I want to talk about is an older band that I just kind of remembered this week. And unfortunately, their singer, guitarist, passed away in 2017. The band's called the Smithereens. And if you've never heard of them, folks, they were fucking incredible. I was listening to the Bellwether Syndicate's new album, and for some reason, it made me think of the Smithereens. It's a song, Behind the Wall of Sleep. First of all, you can't go wrong with a song that references H.P. Lovecraft. This is a great song. There's H.P. Lovecraft song behind it. This song's not about that. In fact, if you're familiar with the song, or if you've never checked it out, check it out. Or let me know if you think the guy in the song is kind of creepy and kind of a sex pest, because that's kind of thing. But the song is great. The song Blood and Roses. Dan, I don't know if you ever heard the bass line from Blood and Roses. It's the perfect example of like a snaking bass line. Strangers When We Meet is a great song. Girl Like You. These are all great songs. The Smithereens deserve their own stop on the New Jersey Expressway. If Bon Jovi has one, the Smithereens sure as hell should have one. And then finally, I'm going to recommend my radio show. The latest edition is up. This week, we start at the Goatman Bridge in Pope Lick, Kentucky, and then we go to French Lick, Indiana. There's a lot of licking on my show. And then next month, we'll actually finish our road trip. We will come to the end of it. But so if you like cryptids and weird crap and dark, spooky music, then that's the show for you.
I have one recommendation. It is a video. It came out 6 days ago, called Embers on a Sleepwalk by R-Ring. And it is a video that I did. I created for them. And so I recommend it, that you see it. And it's a pretty good song. I mean, it's a great song.
You Kenneth Angered this one? You directed?
I Kenneth Angered it.
Yeah, he Kenneth Angered it. All right, cool.
I'm just going to recommend the new Dead Milkmen album, Quaker City Quiet Pills, available on vinyl, CD, and digital form. Hey, look at that. It's almost like we planned it.
Don't ask where he pulled it out of.
Maybe you can.
2 batteries fell out. 2 D batteries.
Can you put the vinyl and post in my hand there, Joe? Is that going to add another hour of editing? We'll pay you in CDs. All right. Yeah, that's just what I
Next week, our guest will be Pat Robertson. He's going to tell us whether or not there's a hell. Because if anybody knows, actually, I think, am I next week? Yeah, I am next week. Next week, folks, I had a really good question planned, but I got tired of hearing Dan talk about being in the second grade and hearing our albums. So next week, we're going to talk about the album Pretty Music for Pretty People, which if you have questions about that album, and I know I've got questions about it,
I do too.
Put them into the comment section, please. It is literally my favorite album, and it gives Dan a chance to actually talk about being part of all this rather than learning about it in a history of music class, right? Somewhere between Mozart and John Philip Sousa. Yeah,
I do have personal connections to each of the albums I wasn't on, and at formative years in my youth. So it's I like talking about it, but I do appreciate it because it is. Maybe we'll talk about the King in Yellow sometime too, the forgotten album.
I'm dead now. Don't be an asshole.
Did you know that Cabbage Patch dolls and used clothing have demons inside them? Pat Robinson told us
chapter names. Now that he's dead, a lot of the chapter names are unintentionally hilarious. A repentant procrastinator. Hey, you too, and you'll clean it up, buddy. Clean up in aisle 4. We had another repentant procrastinator.
All right, bye, folks.
We need paper towels. I need a whole roll.